All right. Hello and welcome to our fifth session of the Brown Bag Virtual Lunchtime Session. So whether this is your first time joining or maybe you've been with me every single month since we launched in May, I want to welcome you to our session today, Knowing Your Value in the Workplace. And as people were jumping on, I had asked at the very beginning if this was a topic that really resonated with you, to raise your hand. And one of the things that I know, at least with all of these topics, is that all of them, at some point in our career, we have minimized our value or maybe not even understood all the value that we brought into the workplace. So I'm hoping today's discussion, as with all of the discussions of the Brown Bag Virtual Lunchtime series, they are designed to inspire you. So I hope you leave inspired today. They're designed to challenge you. And so whether that challenge is, man, something that the presenter said really resonated with me differently than all the other topics today, I hope you feel challenged. And then I hope you feel educated. But most of all, I want you to feel connected as a community, because I think there is so much that we can learn from each other during our open discussion. So with that one, let me go ahead and kick off today's session. And one of the things that I'm always reminded of, and this is like early in my career, when I was finishing up my doctorate, I thought the value that I brought to that first job was the fact that I had a PhD and I had so much to bring. Then I thought when my paychecks got in and I crossed that goal, that financial goal that I had, I thought my value was in money. You know, it sounds crazy when I say it out loud, but that's how I would articulate it. But I want you to know, for everyone on the call, I know my panelists know because they're going to share their stories with you, is your value is so much more than your paycheck. And if we get stuck in the fact that a number, we can assign some number with some zeros and put a dollar sign on it, we minimize what we can, the value that we bring not only to the workplace, but in every relationship that we have. So as more people are still joining, I ask that you will go in and drop us a hello, because I want to make sure that you're greeted and you feel like you're part of this lunch. And so with that being said, we're going to go ahead and meet our panelists so we can kick off this very powerful discussion that I know we're going to have today. All right. So I'm going to go in the order that I see, and I give you permission if you want to turn on your camera, because we do love looking at smiling faces. Well, I ask all of our participants to please keep, not participants, yes, participants, not a panelist, to please keep your mics muted so we don't have any kind of background noise. But I welcome you all to lunch today. Just had a few more people join. We're going to get ready to introduce my lunch buddies that I'm so excited that will be joining me for lunch today. And I'm going to go in the order that I see you on my screen. So we'll start with you, Rita. If you can introduce yourself, and I've asked each of them to say, what does it mean to know your value? What does that mean to you as they introduce themselves? So first up, Rita.
Thanks, Andrea. Great to be with all of you here today. So a little bit about me. I have about 35 years of leadership experience in a variety of functions, everything from marketing and strategy to sales to HR and finance. Spent the last 20 years of my career at ADP, and I retired from ADP back in September of 2019. And I'm now doing consulting in the D&I space, also executive coaching as the founder of BizGuru LLC. But to answer the most important question you asked, which is, what does value mean to me? What does knowing my value mean to me? It's really about knowing your strengths and being able to articulate those strengths and contributions in a way that gets others to value you in a way that's meaningful to you. So thank you for that.
Awesome. That's a great way to kind of think about it. And we're going to talk a little bit more about those strengths, because oftentimes people can't really even articulate what they're good at, let alone start to think about what they're not good at in order to be able to say, this is what I bring to the workplace. All right, Betsy, you're the next square up on my list. Introduce yourself and answer that powerful question about what does it mean to know your value.
Thank you, Andrea. I'm Betsy Cusack. I reside in Cincinnati, Ohio. I retired from Procter & Gamble 5 years ago after a 30-year career, always in HR, and almost always focused on the research and development function within HR. And I had the pleasure of working with Andrea for a number of years before we both left the company on similar timing. Hers to pursue her dreams and me to pursue travel. I too have done a little bit of consulting, a little bit of executive coaching, really working with top talent and helping them get clear on what they want to do and what the impact that they want to have is. And I truly have traveled a lot. I muted myself for a second because my 3-year-old puppy is wandering the house and the doorbell rings. So if I mute quickly, it's because he's started to bark. But I look forward to being here. Thank you. Oh, to answer the question, I don't follow directions well, Andrea. I think knowing your value really is about getting clear on who you are and what the impact that you want to have is. What's the difference that you're going to make? Because the clearer you get on that, the more powerful you as an individual become, because you're very focused and centered on the difference that you're going to make. And it brings a level of confidence to the table that I think women often miss.
Awesome. Yes. And I believe that's another area that we're going to kind of dig into, because women do oftentimes minimize. I mean, we are holding up the world, right, ladies? Holding it all up and minimize the value we bring. So thank you for that. And I will have to say a little note with Betsy. Man, did I spend lots of time in her office just kind of trying to figure out how to navigate. She provided a safe place for outside of my management line, outside of even mentors, to be able to come in and kind of talk. And she really helped me kind of understand my value. And it wasn't because she told me what my value was. She helped me see it by looking inside myself. So thank you for that, Betsy. So glad you could join us. And I pulled you out of retirement for this conversation today.
You anything.
Thank you. Next, I have up on the square, Deborah. Please share about yourself and answer that powerful question to get us started, knowing your value.
Well, greetings, everyone. I'm actually in sunny Florida this morning, but live in Georgia after spending over 35 years working inside a hospital, carrying on various roles, starting in a clinical role and ending as the CEO of several different hospitals. So I'm recently retired this year and doing some consulting for a longtime friend that's more strategic in orient from a strategy perspective. When thinking about that question, I like what both Rita and Betsy said, kind of some key words, specifically knowing what you have to contribute, and then having the self-confidence to speak up and add that value back into the organization. I think, at least for me personally, many women hold back. And in my particular field, even though the majority of healthcare workers are female, the further up in an organization you go, the fewer females there are. And that brings a whole different perspective to the story as far as knowing how to use your voice.
Thank you. Power of the voice. How many of us have heard that one, that your voice matters, but then you're figuring out how to kind of get your voice out. Like, I have so many things to say and they're swimming around my head, but I can't even get it to come out my mouth. So thank you for pointing out that point. Last but not least, Sandy. I love this lady. I had a chance to work with her when she was leading Women in Technology. And I will say, with each one of the lineup we have today, I have some kind of personal story. So since it's my party, I get to tell personal stories of nuggets that I've gotten from each other. Well, Deborah lives in my community and got a chance to talk to her. And Rita, I saw at a conference. Where Sandy, I got the chance to have my first consulting job when I moved here in Atlanta. So thank you for that. And I can't wait to hear what you have to say on this topic. So introduce yourself and give us that powerful perspective on knowing your value.
All right. Thank you very much, Andrea. And I always call her Dr. Andrea. I usually use her entire name because I told her you work hard for that title and you definitely need to claim it. My name is Sandy Welfare. I'm the director for technology transformation for WestRock. So on the IT side, I run the EPMO. So pretty much all the project details around product management and a few other things. This is a new career for me since I've come back into the corporate world. I was in nonprofit for about 9 years between Cool Girls and Women in Technology. Prior to that, I have lived around the globe, Singapore, Sydney, Australia, and then London. And each time it's been interesting to see what a global world we are. Like we really are, whatever the 6 degrees of separation is, I think it's way less now. And I really got a chance to just see what women could do if they really pulled together. And then more importantly, how could they use that voice? And so knowing your value means to me, using your power. Once you have a space that you can articulate, so through leadership, your voice, influence, that to me is when you know when you're using your value. And you've got to use it for those who are, and I say this a lot for young people, you don't have to wait till you get to a certain level to do it. You can do it right now. And it's more importantly, reaching back and pulling up those who are coming behind you, or even those who are with you, because sometimes you might be that person who's needed in a moment for a team, in a moment of a friendship. You can use that voice and that power along the way. So glad to be here today.
Thank you so much. And I know I'm excited. I was so excited, I forgot to even introduce myself. So, and I meant to do that at the beginning, but I am Dr. Andrea Bowens-Jones. For those that may not know me, this is your first time here. I'm actually a chemist by training. Spent a long time in school to become a chemist, a polymer chemist. Worked for a number of years at Procter & Gamble, where I crossed paths with Betsy, leading innovation for deodorants and antiperspirants. But I left in 2015, and I'm oftentimes asked, why would you leave? It's an awesome company, which P&G is an awesome company. But you reach that kind of crossroad in your career where passion pulls you in a direction. And if you are courageous enough to follow that pull, you may find yourself moving, selling your house, moving your family to Georgia, and launching a business. So now I'm a certified coach, speaker, and trainer. I empower people to be great, and I do that in a variety of ways. And this platform here is allowing me to have conversations, powerful conversations with women, and hoping that you will leave inspired with it today. So with that being said, I know we had some people that just entered the room, so welcome. And make sure you drop it in the chat box. And we'll continue I'll continue to monitor the chat box, pull out your questions, because I want our discussion today deeper, pulling back layers so that we can get to the insights that I think will be hugely empowering to women as we kind of move forward. So I want to start with that question that everyone always wants to know, is the challenges that you have faced in your career that have questioned your value, and maybe you underestimated it, and how did you kind of get to that aha moment to kind of shift your seeing yourself what then what actually like to kind of take on that first pull out
in and out.
Yeah, you're cutting in and out, Andrea.
Oh, am I?
Say the last part again. Oh, that was perfect the way you just said it.
Okay. Do you guys get the question? Can you hear me now clearly? Okay, yes. Great. So my first question is about getting over the challenge, a time in your career where you may have underestimated or devalued yourself, and how you got to that aha moment and what changed for you. So Sandy, you'll take that one first. Thank you.
So mine, I mean, and it's going to be a quick story, but it's really all around when you get to the point of where people try to take your power from you. And there are moments where you really have to know who you are. And, it always reminds me of that scene from, it's really interesting that I never thought I'd be quoting from a Marvel movie, but, know who you are. And there were a few challenges of where you start doubting yourself because you're feeling as if the people who are speaking to you or people who are inquiring things from you know more than you do, when really they don't. And most times it's more of what foundation have you built? What kind of relationships do you have? Because when you trust yourself, you won't doubt it. And I think that, I've only had one or two moments like that in my career, thankfully. But when I've decided to take it back, then I was like a lion. And I think that there's just those moments of where the minute you start doubting yourself, or the minute you really start looking at what could I do different, sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes it's everything. Sometimes it's the space you're in is toxic and you no longer deserve to be there. And I think it's just those moments of knowing yourself. And this is where you really got to get a good sense of who you are and being able to then pivot into something new and exciting. So that's my thought.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add to that one? I don't know, Rita, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, no, I think what Sandy shared is so true. And I think it's so important to, going back to this concept of knowing yourself and knowing your strengths, right? So I always, from my perspective, it is all about your mindset. And you could go through, which I have in my career, you could go through a difficult time in terms of, expectations are not realistic, the environment isn't quite what it needs to be, isn't supporting you. I mean, there's so many obstacles that women face in their career. And I think for me, what I've always come back to is this confidence that I know how to get out of it. Like, I can bring the experience, I can bring the knowledge and the expertise, and I can articulate that in a way that doesn't diminish that value. And I think for women, it's so important, whether you call it finding your voice or whether you call it, just being confident in yourself. That honestly is probably more than 50% of the challenge is oftentimes it's about women getting out of their own way and knowing that they actually can do this, and probably even better than most of their, counterparts. And it all comes back to that confidence. So I think that for women, if you have a setback or, whatever it is that you're trying to overcome, always go back to, nothing in life that is worth having comes without a price, right? So we all, even with our worst mistakes, we learn the most from our worst mistakes. So I think that that's what we have to keep coming back to, is that experience and that learning is really what should propel us to, give us the confidence to continue to move forward.
Thank you. Betsy, Deborah, anything you want to add about an experience where you may have minimized your own value and how you kind of moved on that before we move to our next question?
I think the only thing I would add is taking advantage of the opportunity to be vulnerable. And I think that's what Rita and Sandy both were speaking to. I've had some great successes when I kind of stuck my neck out there and used my voice, the confidence to stick my ground and speak what I felt like was right. But at the same time, when I say be vulnerable, it's about the willingness to speak up and not always be right, and be able to accept that as well. I think the more you're able to use that voice, people start to better understand you, build those relationships. There's trust there. People know you're willing to say what you think. You're not the person that's leaving the meeting and going and talking about it outside the room. People start trusting that you're being open and honest in a setting. And so I think it is that confidence to speak with what you know, and also be willing to accept when you're not on the right path as well.
I love that. Vulnerable and then building that trust. Betsy, you want to add before we moved on?
The only add I would make, Andrea, is being comfortable and confident in the choices that you make. So the career choices that you make be can't be right for you, it doesn't mean that they have to be right for somebody else, right? And so if you believe in yourself and you like what you're doing, it's okay to be happy and content, right? But it's also important to stretch yourself, to look for new and different ways to grow. But, a lot of people think that advancement is the key to success. And what I tell you is advancement isn't the key to success. It's liking what you do and doing what you like and being proud of the difference that you make.
Yes. I heard a few things come up. Thank you for that. As I was listening to all four of you speak, this whole thing, the willingness to be vulnerable, this whole thing about knowing your strengths and trust. And it made me think about limiting beliefs that people have or women have about themselves, like struggling to believe that those things are even true. It's easy when you already are a confident person and you know exactly who you are, you know exactly what you bring, so you can tell when people are devaluing you. But if you don't, and you have these kind of limited beliefs about who you are and what you bring, you could struggle, frankly, with your voice and understanding your power. So I'd love to hear, let's start with, I'm going in the order. Let's start with you, Sandy. This whole thing about getting over these limited beliefs, any thoughts that you have for people who are struggling with seeing themselves as a person of power, and you have a voice and it's valuable in this space?
For me, I think that so I always tell people, forget about what other people are saying. What mostly will hold you back is what's going on right between your two ears. And it's more around you've become accustomed to the voice. And you have a story, and that story will basically just play itself out. And until you change that story, nothing changes, because really only you can change the dynamic of self-belief. Now, there's probably going to be some scenarios where you are working in an environment. So I'm in IT, so I've worked across IT, I've worked across manufacturing companies, and it tends to be a mostly male environment. Well, you have to get comfortable being in that environment. And I remember talking to a young lady, and she was really, really good. And she was like, I'm not comfortable being the only female in the room. And I just thought that was hilarious. I mean, I laughed because I was really thinking that she was joking, but she was really serious. And I said, well, why don't you see the value in that diversity? Why don't you see that you're not limited by being the only woman in the room? You're actually empowered by being the only woman in the room, because you're going to give a perspective that they're probably not thinking about. And so if you think about all the times that people have felt limited, sometimes it is within your work environment and the people around you, because there are people who are going to build you up, and there will be people who will try to tear you down. But you've got to get that voice in your head to know what your A game is, and bring that A game every single day. Most times it's not about capability. It's more of the, why do people feel you're less competent? And some of the most competent people I know can be told that they're incompetent because their attitude or their way of engaging with the team is very different and unique. So I feel as if we've got to be honest with ourselves, have that self-talk. And the one thing I shared with someone recently is, don't feel bad about going to talk to someone about the fact that you're probably needing to figure out, that inner strength that you're going to need to build and keep building yourself up, because we're dealing in uncharted times and we're dealing with unprecedented scenarios. And I think that if your mind is healthy, your body's healthy, you will be healthy. But in order for you to be that whole person who's not doubting yourself or really taking ownership of that self-doubt, you've got to find and fix your inner being so that you're actually going to be whole, and you'll be whole so that you can be empowered. And I think that until you get to those stages, each person is different and unique. So don't feel as if what I'm saying is going to be the blanket for any and everyone. Work on the things that you feel are going to help you not feel that self-doubt, because most times it's more about you than it is about others.
Yeah. Anybody else want to add on? I
So
love the, sorry.
go ahead, Andrea.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was waiting for you. The build that I would have ties into one of the questions that you gave us to, as we were kind of thinking through. And it was a question about how do you help somebody overcome their failures and have the confidence. And I think it ties in because, with each failure, there is a learning. And the ability to talk about what you learned as a result of that failure and what you're doing differently as a result of that failure not only builds your confidence, but enables you to articulate in ways that allow other people to see the other side of what failure looks like. So I think it's really important, as you think about, kind of the who you are, who you want to be is, what am I good at? Where have I failed? What have I learned from that failure? And what do I do differently as a result of both of those learnings on both sides of the equation?
Absolutely. I love what both of you guys said. One, you get comfortable with your own voice. That's the one that runs through your head all the time. And also, how do you view your failures? Great comment. Any other questions from participants on the call? Go ahead, make sure you drop them in the chat box. I want to make sure that any question you have for these women, we can get it in the queue quickly. So as we continue on, Deborah, Rita, I don't know if you have another topic, because if not, I want to continue down this road of talking about the view of failures, because I think it's a powerful lens. So thank you, Betsy, for making that segue into our next one, because it helps us to be fearless. Because I remember walking out of the corporate boat into entrepreneurial boat, I underestimated the cost that came with that, and the struggles that came with being a solopreneur versus now I have a team and a whole company at my feet, per se, to be able to pull on. Fears that I didn't know I had came up, and failures that I had not experienced came up. So I love to hear you guys, Rita or Deborah, speak on that one as we kind of move into that piece.
Yeah, sure. Listen, I think that's a great point. And I think, regardless of where you are in your career, there's always going to be the new, right? There's always going to be that new challenge or that new potential obstacle that you honestly, as you said, you don't know what you don't know. So you maybe you underestimate, what it takes. But, for me, I think what's worked really well throughout my life and my career is that I have this kind of personal board of directors that I sort of rely on and go to. And that personal board of directors is a combination of people who know me well throughout my life, and so they're friends, but they're also professional colleagues and people who have either in my career mentored me or I've collaborated with, who I really respect, and really using that personal board of directors as my sounding board. When I hit those roadblocks where, wow, this is uncharted territory, I'm not really sure which way to go. This is a group that, again, you have to really be thoughtful about who's in that little group, because you want them to be really authentic and honest with you about what they're seeing. And you want them to really know you well, so that when you hear that feedback, it really does resonate and it really does become potentially a point of, positive action for you. So for me, I think that's always been an important part of it. And again, I can't underestimate all the points that, my colleagues on the panel have made before, about really getting out of your head. I think so much of us, it's really about what do we believe? And, success is predicated on, I think you said it well, before, which is happiness and success to me are inextricably linked. If you're happy and love what you do, then I don't know how you can't not be successful, right? Because that's really truly the definition of success. And there's other metrics, there's compensation, and there's status and title and all those other good things that some people use as proxies for success. But the reality is that that's not really true life success. Life success is really about finding out who you are and really expanding on that as the venue for your purpose and finding your purpose. That to me is really what it's about.
Well, agree 100%. Happiness and success is absolutely linked to your passion and purpose. So I have questions that are being populated into the chat box.
Andrea.
Yes.
Just a quick comment. This is where I think that women can learn from men. When it comes to success, they tend to fail and move on. We are hand-wringing, we just can't let it go. And I think that this is definitely one of those situations of where you failed, learn the lesson, move on. And I can't stress that enough, because I just see the hand-wringing to the point of where you're now going to impact your future life, and you've just got to let it go.
Absolutely. Thank you for adding that.
Well said.
Because when I think about my husband, that's exactly how he is. Get over it. Just keep going. And I'm still hashing my way through it. I didn't do that good. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay, let's take a question from the chat box. First one is from Manisha. So thank you for putting your question here. Is how do you balance humility with confidence? Is a great one, because as women, we're probably the only ones that kind of think about, staying humble. They say, be bold, just go up and stand for it. But how do you balance it for someone who wants to remain humble, if I should say? My mom was big on that one. Any of you ladies want to take that one?
I'll jump in first. I think it's a perfect question, actually following exactly what Sandy was just saying, because I do think it's a piece that's very unique to women. I think looking back at what Rita was commenting too, I think when you seek the feedback, you're using that humility part, tell me what I did right, tell me what I could have done better, and you're learning from it, and then that is then building your confidence. I think another thing that's, for me personally, feels like is more unique to women is we walk a very fine line between seeming confident and overly confident. Seems like men can get away with being overconfident all the time and nothing splashes back on them, but we turn into a whole lot of other words when we come across as overly confident. And so I think the board of directors idea Rita was using has worked beautifully for me as well, and that I probably gained more confidence over my 35 years by purposefully seeking the feedback and having people that I trusted would tell me when I messed up and that I could learn from it. And then that would help me in the next go round.
Yeah, give you that safe place. Wonder what those little names are.
I don't know.
I think that's an extremely important point that Deborah just brought up, though, about how women are perceived differently with the same behaviors, right? I think this is this is right at the heart of unconscious bias, and it's societal, and it's in the workplace, and let's call a spade a spade. Like, let's call it what it is, right? So unfortunately, there is a double standard. And I probably have seen that personally myself throughout my career, because I am very confident in my abilities and in my skills. And it's so interesting to me that the only quote unquote constructive feedback that I ever received from any of my bosses was, you may want to just tone it down just a little bit, like maybe not be so, maybe not so specific about. And so I found that very interesting, because when I would receive that feedback and I would sort of think about it, and then I would say, but why isn't Bill, who is, I feel, even over the top about these things, why isn't that coming across for Bill? Like, and then when I came into HR, I saw that all the time in talent and succession conversations, where women would get dinged for being confident, for being, she's a little too bossy. She's a little too, a little too whatever. But again, that didn't seem to hurt the men. That the confidence, they were almost rewarded for it. So I do think that for all of us, we just have to remember that, you know, some of that feedback, you should just sort of say, okay, thank you very much, and move on, because there's not much really that can be done about changing those perceptions unless organizations are more committed to addressing those kinds of comments and those kinds of behaviors, you know, throughout their succession and talent processes. At the end of the day, that's really where it gets changed, right? It's all about how the leaders are being rewarded and perceived, and what behaviors in the culture are seen as positive and those worth rewarding.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think this is where words really do matter, because we're in a time now of the double standard on top of the double standard. And if I were really being honest, I would have to say that it's the dialogue that's needed in order to change that dynamic. So recently on my team, we were talking about something, and I was, you know, this, that, and the other, and someone commented, "Boy, you're really bossy." I said, "No, that's just leadership." And I just moved on. And I literally, and you could tell it was like a stop moment. And but I needed to change what they were thinking. And until you can challenge the status quo, nothing changes. And if we're really being honest, until you're challenging the leadership to really look at how you're assessing people, male versus female, because as a Black woman in America, I can tell you I need to be definitely almost double, sometimes, you know, triple better than a male counterpart to be equal. And I think that we're needing to use our words with purpose and intention. And we recently started the Women and Allies group, and I challenged quite a bit of that. But I think once we came to the other side of it, everyone was fine with where we were, because to me, I was able to articulate, this is why we're going to use these words, and then this is how the words are going to help us advance. And I think that anytime that you can put the business imperative as to why we're doing something, people get it. But if it's just the basic conversation around that, we're needing to change the dialogue, but we're needing to challenge the language.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'd actually take a bit different slant on it. I think it really comes down to relationships, right? So if you're perceived as being humble, it's based on a relationship that you have with the person. If you're perceived as being competent, it's based on the relationship that you have with the person. And people who judge you one way or the other may or may not have a relationship with you in which to understand how you are presenting yourself or coming across. And so I take it down to a much more simplistic level. Is if somebody is seeing me as cocky or overconfident, what is it that I need to do to look at that relationship to help them understand who I am and what I bring to the table, so that the judgment isn't there, but rather that they hear the value that I bring. And so I focus on building that relationship.
Okay.
Betsy,
Another question in the, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
so
Sandy.
Betsy,
You want to
so
add?
I just want to, yeah, and it's not even, I just want us to be clear that there are going to be situations where I totally agree that it's about the relationship and building the trust. There are situations where it does not matter. They're not going to be on your side. They're not going to be supportive, because somehow they deem it more appropriate for them to not know who you are and what value you bring to the table. So I'm saying that because I don't want people to think that everyone is going to do this fair and square. That's not usually how it works. And most times when it comes to being confident versus being humble, knowing what you've done sets you apart. You don't have to speak about it. But I also tell people all the time, don't let anyone speak on your behalf. You speak for yourself. Your word, your work should basically validate what you bring to the table, but don't ever let someone be the only person speaking for you, because I can tell you in the back backdrop or the background, people may or may not have good intentions. And I'm only saying that because I've seen the other side.
Very true. True to both. Another question in the chat box is, would you say that we spend too much time thinking about what others are thinking about when they are really focused on themselves? What piece of advice can you give or self-affirmations that you use to remind yourself of your abilities? And this is from Sarah. Thank you, Sarah, for submitting your question.
Can you restate that?
Yes. So the question was is really about what piece of advice can you give or self-affirmations you use to remind yourself of your abilities? Because it's about when we say that we spend too much time thinking about what others are thinking about when they are really focused on themselves. So any piece of advice you have or affirmations you use as a reminder?
I mean, I think the one that I use most frequently was just repeating to myself that I have a right to sit at this table. I have a right to be here. You know, I'm worthy of being here. Fill in the blank.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
my twist on that is I've earned the right to be at this table. Like, so that's a very similar, approach. It's sort of like, just reminding yourself of what you've accomplished and the fact that your contributions and your accomplishments are worthy of that, and not allowing the the naysayers or the people who as Sandra said earlier, maybe not in your corner, not allowing that to again get in your head about what it is. I mean, sort of looking objectively at what you've accomplished and what you can bring to the table, and believing in yourself. So again, it goes back to that self-belief or that self-confidence, if you will, of how you approach those situations.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So hopefully that addressed your question. Oh, have
no,
another
I was just gonna
ad?
say that could also be a signal that they need help or that they need some ears. Most times when people are trying to bring something back to themselves, they're usually trying to let you know they might need help. And I approach it from the aspect of, and Andrea knows me pretty well, that I'm kind to people, but I'm not going to tell you something that's like, if you don't want to hear the truth, definitely don't talk to me. Don't talk to me if you don't want to hear the truth, because I'm definitely going to tell you the truth. But I think most times it's because people are trying to figure out how do I, it may be that they see something in you that they feel you can help them so that they can help themselves. And so I would just, being kind to people and just asking questions. There are times that I'll, ask someone to breakfast or even to coffee or tea, and it ends up being like a whole therapy session, but they might not have known. And it's reaching out and trying to connect on a human level. Because I think that everyone's busy, like I had dinner with some friends last year, and I finally said to them, okay, no one has the monopoly on busy. Let's just all say that we're busy. Like it was almost like we needed to outdo each other on busy. But I think most times people are trying to connect on a human level because they're needing connection to say, I'm not whole. I need help getting back being whole. So I always look at it as when I'm whole, I'm my best self. I know when I'm a smidge off. I know when I'm like 50% off. And like last night, I was after Brianna Taylor, I was definitely 50%. Each day is a different day. And so I woke up this morning and said, don't watch the news, basically get whole. And most times people are trying to figure out, how can you help me to be whole?
Very true. My there are two questions in the chat box that are related to another. So I'm going to ask them together. Is how do you take your power back in the workplace and rebuild your confidence? And the second question related to that one is, what is the most important thing to do to build your confidence? So remember where we got in a discussion about confidence. So any advice you give to both Keisha and Angie, thank you for your question, about this whole notion of building confidence, self-confidence.
And I think it gets back to your core, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you believe you're good at?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do well? And how do you take what you're doing and bring those elements into it? I think confidence grows when you have successes under your belt that you define as successes, not necessarily that others define as successes. It's kind of peeling the onion back, right? Taking the layers off and saying, what is it that I do well? Where is it that I make a difference? And putting your focus and your energy against those in everything that you touch, whenever you can. I mean, that would be my
Thank you. Yes. Deborah, what about you on this topic of building confidence?
I think I'd be remiss if I didn't use my favorite line that most of you know, and it's about looking in the mirror. I have used that with peers, with subordinates, with even bosses. I've used it in my family all the time. And I think as you solicit feedback, you have to pause and really take a introspective look back at yourself and sort through that feedback and easily discard some of it because some of the feedback's not even going to necessarily be on point with what you're trying to accomplish. But I think soliciting the feedback and then taking a really good look in the mirror at where you're coming from and what you're trying to accomplish. What is your purpose? What's your mission? Where are your values and how do they align with whatever the issue is? I think taking that time to do that self-reflection really is what's kind of the underpinning of self-confidence.
Awesome. Thank you.
Can I
And
add
thank
to
you
that,
guys.
Andrea?
Oh,
So
I'm
there's
sorry.
a tool called a Wordle, if you're not familiar with them. It's basically a picture of whatever you want. So in the executive coaching that I'm doing now in retirement, I'm using Wordles to help people look at what their strengths are and what their opportunity areas are. And I find that when you put it into a picture, it becomes much clearer to people about how they're doing. And I do it for others, but you can do it for yourself, right? You can do a Wordle of what are the things you've always heard about yourself from others about your strengths, what you bring to the party, and being able to put that into something that you can literally hang behind your computer. So as you're sitting on your Zoom calls, you've got this in your face visual to say, these are the things that I'm good at, and not lose sight of them. I think that helps people.
Thank you, putting a visual to it. I think oftentimes when it comes to the confidence thing, we take for granted the things that we do really easy. Just like we don't even understand it because it's just easy to us. So one other comment, Sandy, you want to do? And the chat box, yay, is lighting up. So we have lots of questions for you ladies. So
I was just going to say quickly, it's really how do you enter a room is where you know your level of confidence is. And so if you're at a company, how do you walk into that room? So if I walk into the room, and this is just my personality, so I know it's not going to work for everybody. So we had a Christmas party last December, and I walk into the room. I don't know anyone really because I've only been there for about 6 months, but I see, oh, there's the CEO, Stephen. I'm going to go over and have a chat with him because I want to give him my thoughts about a few things. And I think it's how do you walk into that room? Everyone is not going to do what I want to do. However, there are probably people that you want to know or you want them to know you better. How do you walk into that room? And if it's with that low energy and not quite excited, that's just telling you where you are. But if you walk into that room with your head held high and you have a mission of what you're going to accomplish while you're there, I always look at it as how am I walking into the room?
Thank you. So hold your head up, ladies. Straight back. Walk into the room. Fake it till you make it. That's what you said. Fake it till you make it. All right. Next question in the chat box. Any tips on driving clarity on your purpose? Ooh. I'm going to say that to Andrea. Attend one of my trainings. I talk all about purpose and passion, but anybody want to take that? Tips on how to drive clarity on that. Rita?
Yeah, look, I think it goes back to a lot of the things we've already said, right? So the first and foremost is, take the time to jot down what's important to you. Like, what are the things that you really deeply care about? And if you know that, and if you know then what your strengths are, then how do you combine those two things? Like, how do you combine the things that you deeply care about that are inherent in your values and get you excited? And it's sort of like the reason why you want to get up in the morning. That's sort of like the way I think about it. And honestly, that's how I found the work around inclusion for me. I mean, I spent most of my career in business and finance and strategy in places that had, really nothing to do necessarily specifically with HR. But when I was asked to take on that role for my prior employer, I was like, oh my God, like, where has this been my entire life? Because I am naturally a person who cares about justice. I am naturally a person who cares about equality. I am naturally a person who cares about people who have been marginalized. And I've done that in my personal life, but I never thought that I could take that passion in my personal life and actually make it valuable in business. And so when I figured that out, I was like, my God, this is it. Like, this is it. It took me 35 years, but this is it. So I think that would be my, I guess my recommendation is first of all, be open to lots of different things. I mean, if one thing I could say about my career is people might look at my resume and they might say, well, did she really know what she wanted to do when she grew up? and the answer to that is, I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do, but I know what I wanted it to feel like. And I wanted to be in charge. I mean, that's just my personality. I wanted to be in charge. So whatever I did, I just wanted to be leading it and leading people. And so I did that for a lot of different functions and a lot of different, organizations. And to me, that's really, again, going back to that intersection of finding, what's important to you and what are you naturally good at, where it's not work. Look, if it comes naturally to you, then it's not work, right? So how about leveraging that as the basis for your confidence and for moving forward?
Thank you. I think they call that, Rita, boss move. You wanted to be the boss.
I did. I guilty as charged. I wanted to be the boss.
Yes, I love it. Because me too, I wanted to be the boss too. But I think following the things that you're drawn to, but if I had to add one thing to that one is tell yourself the truth. I think that was the thing that took me so long is if someone could have told me to kind of open my eyes, like I was already doing what I do now in so many other parts. And Betsy remembers that because of my program, Resident Scholar, I was already training people. I was already kind of open their eyes to something. But because I was in this box of this is what a PhD polymer chemist should do, I wasn't telling myself the truth and giving myself permission to allow it to be just to follow it 100%. So ditto to you, Rita, and then I would add on, just tell yourself the truth, even if it goes against what everybody else thinks you should be doing.
Love it.
Awesome. I cannot believe it's 12:58. The lunch hour goes by so fast. And there's some really good questions in the chat box. And I just want to read them in case we're going to do rapid fire responses because they're that good. And this comes from Tina. And she says, how do you balance your control and ownership as a manager with the trend of servant leadership? And then her follow-up question is, how do you view globalization as impacting the progress of women in leadership? Ride the wave right now, huh? Any rapid fire response? I know that's a deep question, but anybody have a rapid response to that one? How do you balance your control and ownership as a manager and the trend of servant leadership? That has a bunch packed into that one. And then how do you view globalization as impacting the progress of women in leadership? Rapid fire.
So one of the hats that I wore at P&G was I led a senior women's group that looked at women in leadership and R&D globally. It really caused us to take a holistic view of who is our talent and where is our talent and what do we need to do to ensure that they're successful where they're at versus thinking that they had to come to headquarters to be able to make a difference. So I think globalization actually causes us to expand our views and also expands our definition of what success looks like, because so many models aren't US based in terms of success and valuing contributions. And my 2 cents.
Thank you. Rapid fire. Another question. Along with board of directors, who also uses mentors and coaches or asks for sponsorship? In what way are these used? So in particular, helping you navigate your career. Rapid fire.
I think you just got to find people who are going to tell you the truth. I have several mentors so I have a meeting with one tomorrow, and some are very good just in terms of where I am right now, and then there's others that are very good about where I want to go. And I really use that time to pick their brain about just helping me to really, they help me to understand me better. That's probably the better way of saying it. So I would say find someone who you trust, find someone who you think will trust you and see that they have your best intention at heart. And I think that when you find that one or two people, I mean, I have some young people that I've been mentoring for a long time, and it never started off as a mentoring. It just started off as, can I get together and meet you? And then it became something else. So I currently have a cool sister who's through a true program of mentoring. And she's, I've known her since she was 8. Now she's a junior at Alabama State University. And I'm so hopeful for the young people, because I think that they, not only am I able to help her, she's able to help me. I see the world from a different perspective. So I would just find people you think you can connect with, male or female. Please don't feel as a woman, I need to have a woman. Most of the men have been the ones who helped me. Most men have advanced me further, maybe because they were in the position, but at the same time, they had my best interest in mind, and they pushed me and told me the truth.
Awesome. It's been so great, and I know there were questions that I did not get to in the chat box, but I thank you guys. At least if you had multiple questions, hopefully I got one of your questions answered. So as we get ready to close our lunch hour, any parting advice, and I have some announcements, so don't hang up right away, right after our panelists have any parting words or advice that you would give if someone is struggling with knowing their value. And make your responses really quick. We'll start with Rita, advice.
Listen, I think it goes back to, we've all said it, right? Find those people you trust that can help, support you. Get a coach if that works for you. It's all of the above, right? It's not one thing. It's doing all those things. And be honest with yourself and push yourself to do more.
Awesome. Betsy, advice.
Circle of influence versus circle of concern. What's in your ability to influence? And if it's not in your ability to influence, why are you spending time on it and energy against it?
Can't do anything about it. Yep. Deborah.
Work on building relationships based on trust.
Yes. Sandy.
Time will be your biggest commodity. Use it wisely, but more importantly, use it so that you're building you.
All right, building you. Love it, love it, love it. This has been so much fun. And our last announcement, one, I'd like to thank everyone. So give them a virtual hand clap. Go ahead and put the hand clap up there to thank our panelists because they exceeded expectations. And I'd like to thank each and every one of you for attending, and join me for the final session on October 27th as I wrap up this virtual lunchtime series with number 6, Girl Talk. This is where I'm inviting one of my closest girlfriends. Everybody should have that place where they can go and have those raw conversations about career and things like that. So I hope you'll join me as we wrap up. A survey, please complete the survey. It'll be sent out within 24 hours. And I know that many of you may not be ready to kind of walk into the what's next. You're still struggling to understand your value and all those things. So if today's topic inspired something in you, I hope you'll complete the journey with me by joining me for a 4-part series called Slaying Your Invisible Dragons. Registration is open, and the first session is about knowing your value, where we're going to take not only the nuggets, but the curriculum that I have built around slaying your dragon. So I don't know if you guys can see the screen here for it, but I'm going to drop the registration information in the chat box should you want to go ahead and find out more information about it today. But you can go to idgvision.com/slayingdragons to find out more information about that. So join me once again. Go to your reaction button, give a hand clap out. Woo! To Rita, Betsy, Deborah, and Sandy, you guys were awesome. Thank you so much for joining me for lunch.
Thank
I
you.
hope to see you back next month for those of you that still want to be a part of the series. And if you're interested, I only have 30 seats, probably less than that because registration opened at midnight for Slaying Your Dragon. So I hope you join me for that as well. So until next time, you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day. And see you next time. Bye-bye.
Take care, ladies. Bye-bye.